So let's first talk about your school days. You've been quoted as saying, the only things that I liked at school were the games. Why the lack of interest in the academic side of things?
Ah! You attacked me with a microphone. God. And art and English literature. But, yeah, they dressed up all the, quote, academic subjects in boring paper, brown paper, that said he was just totally unattractive. That's how they dressed it up.
Did you excel at games?
Yep.
Which games in particular?
Netball and trampolining and athletics.
Any particular sport in athletics, running or what?
The javelin, actually, which has come in handy in some gigs because I use the mic stand. If there's some real pinheads in the audience, I can pin them down with my mic stand.
After school, at 17, you left home to live in London, something which you called an adventure, was it?
Yeah. I ended up sharing a flat with a puff in one room. It was a one-room flat, and it was a communal kitchen and all that. And where else did I live? I lived with someone else. And then I went back home because I didn't find anywhere else to live, just for a short spell. Then I left home for good and stayed in a horrible block of flats with those eyeglasses where old women look out, you know, they've got nothing to do all day, so they either look through the net curtains or the eyeglass.
Who and what were the Bromley contingent? I believe you said there was no such thing.
We didn't call ourselves the Bromley contingent. It was a title or a tag that was put on us by certain music people, press, journalists, that saw us and friends that we knew going to the early Pistol gigs and other events in London that didn't have a big audience. For some reason, they thought we all came from Bromley. It's just Steve that comes from Bromley. And we were called the Bromley contingent.
So no real significance behind that particular title?
No, not at all.
In September 76, you played on the bill of the 100 Club Punk Festival. The lineup of the band then was yourself, Steve, Sid Vicious and Marco Peroni, now of Adamant fame, of course, who apparently was the only one who had played in a band before. Can you tell me a bit about that gig?
The worst player at the gig was Marco because he had played before, so it didn't fit in with us that well. It was another adventure. It was a very special event. And when you think that a lot of bands rehearse, invite record company people down to see them, they work really hard and their first gig is usually like teething problems or something. We created a very strong impact from that one-off gig that was just thrown together literally. And we were infamous from that day onwards.
Didn't you and others have something to do with the opening of the punk movement's mecca, the Roxy Club?
Nothing to do with the opening of it, no. It was someone called Andy Chkowski. Oh, we played there and we played the last night of it, probably one of the first nights. But we weren't involved in the business side of making it.
Right, despite becoming musically proficient and gaining public acceptance, because of your early image, people tended to mistrust you and you had a lot of problems getting a record deal.
Correct. There was a lot to do with a lot of groups around that time were making music and looking like the very immediate short-term thing that the record companies wanted people to be. Like what's happening now, like you get record companies that will sell one band, they'll be like in the top 5 or 10 for 2 records and then they'll disappear. That's exactly what the record industry wanted to do with what they called punk rock music. So you got loads of old sheep dressed up in lamb's clothing, looking like what they thought was punk, you know, just like a uniform, playing nothing with any depth or any lasting appeal. And that was fine for the record business because they didn't like what some bands were doing, especially what we were doing. I think they considered us threatening, the fact that we saw it as a long-term thing. And what we wanted from the record contract wasn't stupid. I mean, a lot of the people were very stupid when they signed up and didn't demand anything from the record company. So they were laughing. They got something for nothing. And the silly bands just took the bait and faded away.
In fact, another quote which I've got written down here: we'll do it on our own terms. We're not going to water down our music to make it acceptable to people who sit behind desks. Can you remember that?
Yeah, I don't know if I did or Steve said that, but it's an opinion that we all felt. It's the same as the question before. It's like if you want to tart it up and make it something to laugh at or something that's instantaneous, that won't last long, you can do it and like be a bit of a slag and do all the things that bands are supposed to do, be like very submissive and do what they want you to do, you know, ridiculous amounts of interviews, silly photo sessions to cater for the teeny bop magazines and all that kind of thing.
Your music was once described as, and I quote, boring sub-hippie drivel dressed in knickers for the sake of art.
Nick Lowe said that, who's pushing 40 now, I think.
Okay, how would you describe your music then?
Just dressed up in knickers.
What was the idea behind the Creatures project? Just yourself and Budgie using voice and drums?
It didn't happen as an idea, it just happened as an accident. And the first song that we did was But Not Them, during a rehearsal when two members of the band, the guitar people, happened to be having a tea break or something, and we were just knocking around in the rehearsal room and wrote But Not Them. Just some lyrics that I had, and it's a drum pattern that Budgie had, and just put them together. Something to do whilst they were drinking their tea. And then us and the rest of the band decided it didn't need anything else. It worked just as drums and voice. And then the idea was that we do a few songs and not include it on the Juju album and keep it separate.
In June of last year, you were told by a throat specialist to stop singing for 6 months and also to change your singing technique. How did you feel about that advice?
I resented it. And, I mean, at first I was very worried because I did lose my voice and I was coughing up blood, and it felt very serious. It was very, I mean, it wasn't just a sore throat, it was, like, really painful. And we had to cancel a couple of Scandinavian dates, but with a few days' rest, we did finish the tour. I got back, had a few days rest. We should have started recording immediately, but we'd already done some recording for the Dreamhouse album before we went away, so we were doing some mixing before doing recording, and then in the studio it's a lot easier to look after your voice because the situation's much more controllable. I mean, God, you know, in Scandinavia we're playing with such bad equipment some nights, and it was just a real battle just to be heard. And when you're fighting against sound problems, you tend to scream or shout and not really sing.
Do you still have problems with your voice now, or?
No, I mean, it's just, it happened because we've been working a hell of a lot, and it was just the strain of doing more work, but with bad equipment as well, and live, and like catching a cold and all that rubbish. And yeah, I'm fine. I mean, I think I'm singing better than I ever did.
What do you think about the current punk boom? Do you think it can be likened to the 76, 77 thing?
Humbug, pure humbug. Poppycock. No, it's ridiculous. It's a uniform already. It's like calling yourself a hippie in the early 70s or late 70s and thinking you were daring. It wasn't. It was very acceptable. And the people that took the risks were the people that were either beaten up in the street for looking the way they did or picked on by the establishment or whatever. And I think it's the initial people that take the risks.
Since 78, you've made an abundance of hit singles and albums. How difficult do you find it to come up with new original material nowadays?
No problem. The difficulty is getting played on the radio. That's getting more of a problem with what I just explained to you about the way it's reverted back with the music business of tarting something up to last a few months, and they bombard the market with it. They, you know, somehow get these DJs to play their record every 5 minutes. I don't know how, I'm sure. I mean, money, it doesn't come into it, I don't suppose. But, yeah, it's very poisonous at the moment.
There's also a current boom in independent labels. You yourself are obviously signed to a major. What do you think about the independent labels then?
There's a lot of them now. When we signed, there wasn't any. I think the idea is good, but a lot of them now are very predictable in that a certain type of band will go with a certain independent label. And really, a lot of them are just as bad or worse as the major record companies in that they operate the same way. They have the same kind of mentality, but they've got a lack of funds, so they don't do some of the bands that they've got any justice.
So do you think there's too much music about then, nowadays?
Too much bad music about.
What would you class as bad music?
The charts are pretty bad. And a lot of the independent stuff is very bad. If you listen to the John Peel show, it's a joke, because it's just being played for the sake of it, because it's unknown and unheard of. It's not being played because it's something that's really good, and it's, finding it hard to be played. It's just got this credible thing in that, it's on an independent label, and that's all.
You've been to Japan. What do you think the pull of the Far East is to bands nowadays?
The unknown. It's so very alien. I can go to Europe, and some of America's quite alien, but when you go to Japan, it's so totally different. It really, you're in a foreign country. The kind of food, the customs, and the way they talk, the kind of language, and it's totally different. And quite charming at first, but it's charming in that they want to help you as much as possible, but in the end, if you're there for a while, it's a bit, you think they're humiliating themselves in front of you, which is strange to come to terms with.
You mentioned Germany earlier on before I switched the tape recorder on. What do you think about Germany and the people? Like tonight, your first gig in Germany this year, yeah?
Well, like the gigs I don't like there being British, hearing the British voice that have just come here to see us because we're a British band. I don't like that, and I don't like Germany much.
Why not?
I just find it very stern, and just when you're travelling, just not necessarily meeting rock people, because you always get a distorted view if you just meet people that go to gigs or promoters or whatever. Just stopping off at, truck stops or hotels, in the street, in shops and that. It seems really rude. Their translation of the human body or anything to do with sex or something is real we played in Ljubljana in Yugoslavia, and that's a very restrictive environment, but the people weren't restricted, if you know what I mean. They were still outgoing.
Well, I suppose the next question is why do you come to Germany then to tour?
This is the last time. In
Germany or touring?
In Germany.
There were a lot of Brits in the audience tonight, though. That obviously made a difference.
I don't like the idea that, where Brits let us in, so what? I don't particularly like Britain much. It's a real insult to think that people have come not to see the band because we're Brits. I feel disgusted.
But how do you know they haven't come to see the band?
Because it's talk to us in English, Siouxsie. We're Brits. That's the best part of touring, is when you're in totally different environments. That's why we go away. That's why we play England. We don't play Britain as much as we're working a lot, but it's not playing in Britain. It's going to Japan and Hong Kong and Yugoslavia and Spain and Italy and all that. It's refreshing.
Would you now regard yourselves as an establishment band?
We're an established monster in the works, yes. As I said, not be tagged along with being an independent or an underground band. And I think more bands that people maybe think the media wouldn't like, the more bands that get into the media, the better, that are like that.
Do you think the live show's dying?
And I think a lot of people will there's certain bands that cannot play live, not proficiency-wise, but cannot project anything live, can't approach it any differently without looking down at their instruments and not looking out at the audience. And I think bands that can come across live are going to be more valuable.
So do you think when people come to gigs they expect to see an exact replica of the album or the single, or do you expect them to see something entirely different?
If they do, I hope we disappoint them, because I can't stand people expecting or demanding anything from us. It's always been a very different thing, and I think it's healthy that it's different from our recording work and live work. And it works the other way. A lot of people are great live and they can't do it in the studio, and I think you know, it's two wonderful areas and should be taken separately.
So let's first talk about your school days. You've been quoted as saying, the only things that I liked at school were the games. Why the lack of interest in the academic side of things?
Ah! You attacked me with a microphone. God.